transport ship shook as it passed through the stadium gravity field. Sat alone in the cargo hold, her small bag between her feet. She could hear the other passengers in the main cabin, their voices deep and rumbling, speaking languages her translator chip struggled to process. It was the only Terran on the ship. Docking clamps locked in place with a heavy clang. Stood, pulled her bag over her shoulder, and walked toward the exit ramp. When the doors opened, she got her first look at Station Helix 9, the Galactic Union Military Academy. It was enormous. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Buildings rose like mountains of metal and glass. Thousands of beings moved through the wide corridors, and realized immediately that she was the smallest person in sight. Drew walked past her. He was almost 3 meters tall, his scales dark green and from old battles. He looked down at her for half a second, then looked away as if she was not worth remembering. Behind him came a group of cadets, their bodies covered in thick gray fur, their teeth yellow and sharp. They smelled like wet earth and violence. One of them sniffed the air as passed, then made a sound that might have been loud. Walking. She had read about every species she would meet here. She knew there were cold-blooded reptiles who valued strength above all else. She knew there were pack hunters who respected only those who could fight. She knew there were warriors with armored shells that could stop bullets. She knew that Terrans, her people, were listed at the bottom of every combat ranking in the galaxy. Found the registration office after 20 minutes of walking. A bored-looking alien with too many eyes processed her documents without speaking. When he finally looked up at her, his eyes blinked one at a time. Terran Advanced Combat Division. He said it like he was reading a joke. First Terran in this division, congratulations. Thank you, said. Assigned to Squad 17. Barracks on level 42. Your commanders of the alien paused. Good luck, you will need it. Her assignment card and left without another word. Barracks were simple. Metal beds, metal walls, metal floors. Everything was built for beings much larger than her. The bed she was assigned was meant for us, so her feet did not even reach halfway down. She set her bag on the mattress and began to unpack. The door opened behind her. Turned and saw 2 aliens enter. The first was a massive and covered in scars. His name tag read. The second was her exoskeleton black and shiny like polished stone. Her compound eyes reflected its image 100 times. Her name was. When he saw, his nose twitched. What is this? She said, I am assigned to Squad 17. He stepped closer. He was so large that his shadow covered her completely. You are a Terran. Terrans belong in medical units or supply chains, not in combat division. Passed the entrance examinations, said calmly. A clink sound with her mandibles. It took a moment to realize that was laughing. The examinations test knowledge and basic fitness. They do not test survival. You will not last 1 week here, little Terran. Did both of them, was 4 times her weight. Shell could probably withstand a grenade. By every measure of the use, she was nothing. Maybe said, we will see. Turned back to her unpacking. After a moment, she heard them leave. The entire division gathered in the main hall for orientation. Commander stood at the front, his scales pale with age but his eyes still sharp and cruel. He spoke about the history of the Academy, about the honor of serving the Galactic Union, about the standards expected of every cadet. The Academy AI activated a holographic display. Species combat ratings appeared in the air, ranked from highest to lowest threat level. We're near the top, but we're just below them. The we're in the middle marked as excellent defense fires. Terrans were at the bottom. Display read, Terrans, classification, endurance adaptive, threat potential low, notes, fragile skeletal structure, limited natural weapons, slow healing, not recommended for frontline combat. Laughed around her. She did not react. She simply memorized the information on the display, knowing the weaknesses listed for every other species as well. The orientation ended, she walked to the mess hall alone. The food dispensers were designed for alien digestive systems, but she found a setting for Terran nutrient paste. It tasted like nothing, but it would keep her alive. She was eating in silence when someone sat across from her. It was Terran, young, maybe a year older than her, with tired eyes and a crooked smile. His uniform showed he had been at the academy for some time. Me and you, he said, I have been here for 6 months. You are the first new Terran I have seen since I arrived. She replied. He looked around the mess hall, then leaned closer. Listen to me carefully. The aliens here do not hate us. That would require them to see us as threats. They simply do not believe we are real soldiers. To them, we are small and soft and breakable. Are we? He asked. He smiled, but there was no happiness in it. The combat exam is in 3 weeks. It is a survival test on a hostile moon. Cadets are hunted by drones for 48 hours. Last year, a died during the exam. The year before, 3 cadets were injured so badly they could never fight again. Listen without expression. Exam will change everything, Minyu continued. It will show them what you really are, or it will break you. There is no middle ground. Finished her food and stood. Then I will not break. Walked back to her barracks, passing aliens who did not even bother to look at her. She was invisible to them, unimportant, a mistake that would correct itself soon enough. At night she lay in her oversized bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about the colony where she grew up, about the pirates who came when she was 16, about the 11 days she spent alone in the wreckage waiting for rescue that almost never came. It had been small then too. She had been weak and afraid and alone. But she had survived. She would survive this. 3 weeks of training felt like 3 months. Morning began at station dawn, when the artificial lights slowly brightened to simulate a sunrise. Squad 17 gathered in the training yard while Commander watched from above, his cold reptile eyes missing nothing. First drill was always running. The course stretched for 5 kilometers through artificial terrain, over walls and under barriers, through water and across unsailed platforms. The finished first every time, their powerful legs carrying them like wind. They were slower but steady, their endurance built over millions of years of evolution. Even with her heavy skeleton, completed the course in respectable time. It was last every single day. It was not slow for Terran, but she was racing against beings whose bodies were designed for war. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears, but she never stopped, never walked, never gave up. Did not matter, still laughed at her every time she crossed the finish line. My world, he said one morning, the weak are left behind for the predators. They serve a purpose by feeding the strong. Why do Terrans send their smallest to fight? Sweat from her face, her legs were shaking, she could barely stand. My world, she said quietly, the smallest off survive the longest. The big ones attract attention. The small ones hide and wait and outlast. Nor hiding is not fighting. Fighting is winning, replied. Walked away, but noticed that had stopped to listen. This compound eye stayed her for a long moment before she too turned and left. Second week brought tactical simulation. Quad 17 was placed in a virtual environment where they had to defeat an enemy force guarding a supply depot, gave them 30 minutes to plan and 60 minutes to execute. To charge directly, his instincts demanded aggression, speed, overwhelming force, agreed that a frontal assault was best, trusting her armored shell to absorb any fire. The other squad members, 2 more and another, nodded along. At the tactical display, she saw something the others had missed. Troll pattern has a gap, she said. Every 12 minutes, the eastern quarter is unguarded for 90 seconds. If we send 2 soldiers through there, they can disable the power generator. The enemy defenses will fall, and we can walk in without a fight. Everyone looked at her, then laughed. Our warriors, not thieves. We do not sneak through gaps like frightened animals. We attack. Mander said nothing. He simply watched. Quad attacked. They were overwhelmed in 7 minutes. The simulation ended in total failure. Afterward, found Minu in the library. He was studying alien combat histories, trying to find any advance he could. Squad failed the simulation, he said. It was not a question. They did not listen to me. Never do. Minu closed his book. I have been in 12 simulations. I have given advice in 8 of them. They listened to me once by accident and we won. Every other time they ignored me and we lost. Down across from him, how do you keep going? He smiled sadly. Because the combat exam is real. In the simulations, they can afford to ignore us. On that moon, when drones are hunting them and the ground is trying to kill them, they will learn the truth about survival. What truth? Strength means nothing if you are dead, and Terrans are very, very good at not dying. At night, did not sleep. Instead, she went to the Academy library and began to study. Read about anatomy. She learned that their scales were strong, but their joints were weak. She learned that cold temperatures made them slow and stupid. Read about biology. She learned that their incredible speed came from fast muscle fibers, but those same muscles tired quickly, could sprint for 2 minutes at maximum power, then needed 10 minutes to recover. Read about physiology. She learned that their exoskeletons were nearly unbreakable from the outside, but their internal organs were soft. She learned that certain frequencies of sound could disorient them. Read about the hunter drones used in the combat exam. She learned their sensor types, their patrol algorithms, their known weaknesses. Read until the station lights began to brighten again, and then she went to training. They announced the combat exam details that afternoon. Quad 17 would deploy to Moon 4 in 5 days. The moon was a volcanic wasteland with hot atmosphere, unstable ground, and extreme temperature changes. Cadets would be dropped individually across the surface. They would have 48 hours to survive, while hunter drones tried to eliminate them. Reaching the extraction zone earns bonus points, said. Being eliminated means failure. Being killed means your family receives a letter. He paused and looked directly at it. Members of the squad will participate. No exceptions, no special treatment, no rescues. The message was clear. He expected her to fail. He might even expect her to die. At his eyes and did not look away. Knight found her in the equipment room, checking her survival gear piece by piece. You are preparing, he observed. Yes, sir. No, you cannot win the exam. You are too small, too slow, too fragile. The drones will find you within hours. Checking her gear, maybe. Closer, her mandibles clicked softly. I have been watching you. You study when others sleep. You learn when others boast. You prepare when others assume victory. Is there a question? Yes. Compound eyes reflected the light. Why do you try so hard when you know you will fail? I looked up. Because I do not know that. You think you know, thinks he knows, thinks he knows. But none of you have ever seen what a Terran can do when survival is the only option. She returned to her work. Watched her for a long time before leaving without another word. Days later, boarded the transport to Moon 4. Through the window, she could see the volcanic surface glowing red and orange against the blacks of space. The other cadets sat in the transport with her. Most of them were twice her size. Some were 3 times her weight. All of them had natural weapons, armored bodies, or superhuman strength. Had none of those things. She had 11 days of survival burned into her memory. She had knowledge gathered through sleepless nights. She had patience that came from waiting alone in the dark, wondering if help would ever come. Transport began its descent. Drop pod hit the ground hard enough to rattle his teeth. Warning lights flashed red inside the time capsule as emergency systems activated. She unstrapped herself and kicked the hatch open. Air rushed in. The smell of sulfur and burning rock filled her lungs. She was in a ravine, surrounded by walls of black volcanic stone. In the distance, you could see lava fields glowing orange beneath a sky choked with ash. Suit display showed the temperature, 47 degrees Celsius. Her water supply, 2 liters. Her food, emergency ration pace for 3 days. Her weapon, a single stun pistol with 12 shots. And her temperature regulator beeped twice and died. Not panic, she had expected something to go wrong. On a hostile moon designed to test soldiers, equipment failure was not bad luck. It was part of the test. Went to her suit's maintenance panel and examined the broken component. The cooling system used a small pump to circulate fluid through her suit. The pump had cracked during landing, leaking coolant into the electronics. Would not care. Their scales protected them from heat. Would suffer but survive, their thick fur providing insulation. Or would barely notice their exoskeleton designed for extreme environments. For a Terran, this failure could be fatal within hours. Sat down and thought. Spare wire in her kit. She had a water tube that could be cut and repurposed. She had a small battery meant for her communication device, which was useless anyway since communications were forbidden during the exam. Minutes later, she had built a crude cooling system. It was not elegant. It would not last more than a day, but it would keep her alive long enough to find something better. She began to move. Veen led north away from the lava fields. She walked slowly, conserving energy, watching her footing on the unstable ground. Every few minutes, she stopped to listen. The hunter drone made a sick hung sound when they flew. If she heard that sound, she would have seconds to hide. Walked for 3 hours before he heard the first scream. Came from somewhere to her east, beyond a ridge of volcanic rock. A howl of rage and frustration, followed by the high-pitched whine of a stun weapon, then silence. Cut it down? Probably, based on the direction. His aggression would have made him an easy target. Kept walking. Hour 6, her suit told her that 4 more cadets had been eliminated. The drones were efficient. They used thermal sensors, motion detection, and predictive algorithms to track their prey. A cadet who ran was usually caught within minutes. Not run. She walked at a steady pace, staying in the shadows where the hot rocks masked her body heat, moving only when she was certain the path was clear. Came suddenly on 4. The sun dropped below the horizon and the temperature plummeted. Within an hour, it went from burning hot to freezing cold. The rocks that had been too hot to touch now accumulated frost. It was when moved fattest. Her body was designed for this. Terrans were persistent hunters, built to travel long distances at moderate speeds, while they grew sluggish in the cold and they shivered in their dens, walked through the darkness with steady steps. Found a cave as the night reached its coldest point. The entrance was narrow, too small for Aurora to enter comfortably. She squeezed through and discovered a chamber just large enough to shelter in. At a small portion of her rations, she drank exactly 200 milliliters of water. She closed her eyes and rested without truly sleeping, her ears always listening for the hum of drones. Hour 20, more than half the cadets had been eliminated. From her cave at dawn and continued north. Her map showed an extraction zone 12 kilometers away. If she maintained her pace, she could reach it by nightfall. Then she heard the clicking. Stopped immediately. The sound was coming from a crater ahead, a depression in the volcanic rock formed by some ancient impact. She approached carefully, staying low, and looked over the edge. It was lying at the bottom. It was wounded. A long crack ran down her exoskeleton, and dark fluid leaked from the gap. Her compound eyes were unfocused, flickering randomly as her body tried to repair the damage. The situation. She could see tracks leading into the crater, and she could see the scorch marks on the rocks where a drone had attacked. They had been hit, had fallen, and had been unable to climb out. The smart thing to do was walk away, had mocked her, had dismissed her, was a competitor who would slow her down and track drones. Climb down into the crater. Eyes focused slowly. Terran, what are you doing? You examined the wound. The crack went deep, but it had not reached the vital organs. The fluid leaking out was heme lymph, the equivalent of blood. If the bleeding was not stopped, would die within hours. If me said, her voice was weak, you cannot carry me, I am too heavy, you will die trying. I am not going to carry you. Then what? Her pack and removed her water tube, her spare wire, and a mineral sample she had collected during her walk. The mineral was high in calcium carbonate, compound she remembered from her studies of biology. Her shell is made of chitin reinforced with minerals, said as she worked. If I can create a paste with similar compounds and apply it to the crack, it will harden and stop the bleeding. Your body can do the rest. Watch her with something like amazement. How do you know this? I studied. Why would you study biology? Applied the paste to the wound. It was not perfect, but it would hold. Because I knew that someday knowing it might save a life, may mine, may someone else's. Helped stand. It was unsteady, but the bleeding had stopped. The pain was still there, visible in the way held herself, but she could walk. Extraction zone is 12 kilometers north, said. We move now while you still have strength. We rest only when necessary. We do not fight unless there is no other choice. Looked at her for a long moment. You were right, Terran. I laughed at you when you arrived. I thought you were nothing. I know. Then why are you helping me? Started walking. Because you are still mine, and because Terrans do not leave people behind. Load her out of the crater, and together they began the long walk north. In them, the hunter drones continued their hunt. Somewhere in the volcanic wasteland, cadets were falling one by one. The exam was more than half over, and the survivors were growing desperate. Did not feel desperate. She felt calm. She felt focused. Had 11 days of experience that no simulation could teach. She had survived worse than this. She would survive this too. The last 18 hours were the worst. Moved through a landscape that seemed designed to kill them. The ground cracked and shifted beneath their feet. Vents of toxic gas erupted without warning. The temperature swung from freezing to burning and back again, sometimes within minutes. Getting weaker. The wound pace was holding, but her body was fighting infection. Her movements were slow and clumsy. Her compound eyes kept losing focus, then snapping back with visible effort. Talk to me, said. About anything, it will keep you awake. What should I say? Tell me about your homeworld. Quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was distant and tired. My world has no seasons. The temperature never changes. The sky is always gray. My people live in great hives carved into mountains, millions of us working together as one. It sounded peaceful. It's boring, made a sound that might have been a weak laugh. That is why I joined the military. I wanted to see the galaxy. I wanted to fight. I wanted to be something more than another worker in the hive. And now I'm walking through a volcanic wasteland with a Terran who should have died hours ago. Eyes focused on. Why did you come here? Why would a Terran choose to fight among species that see you as prey? Walking, she did not answer for a long time. When I was 16, she finally said, my colony was attacked by pirates. They came in the night and killed everyone they found. My parents, my brother, my neighbors, everyone. Said nothing. Hid in a storage compartment beneath our house. I stayed there for 2 days, listening to the pirates search for survivors. When they finally left, I crawled out and found that I was alone. The communication tower was destroyed. The emergency beacon was broken. No one knew I was alive. What did you do? Survived. I found water in a broken pipe. I found food in the wreckage. I made shelter from debris. I waited. Voice was flat, empty of emotion. 11 days, that is how long it took for rescue ships to arrive. 11 days alone, not knowing if anyone would ever come. I walked in silence for several minutes. If that continued, I decided I would never be helpless again. I would learn to fight. I would learn to survive. I would become strong enough that no one could ever take everything from me again. And that brought you here. Yes. Looked at the extraction zone on her map. 6 kilometers remaining. The galaxy thinks Terrans are weak. I am here to prove them wrong. Drone appeared without warning. The moment the sky was empty. The next, a hunter drone dropped from behind a rock formation, its sensors locking onto their heat signatures. It was followed by a second drone, then a third. They formed a triangle around and cutting off all its routes. Run said. She turned to face the drones, her body instinctively preparing for combat despite her wounds. I will hold them off. No. You cannot fight 3 drones. No one can. I'm not going to fight them. Reached down and grabbed a handful of volcanic ash from the ground. I am going to blind them. First drone fired. Threw herself sideways, the stun bolt passing close enough to make her hair stand up. She rolled across the ground, came up running, and hurled the ash into the air between herself and the nearest drone. Ash cloud expanded rapidly. The drone's optical sensors flickered and stuttered, struggling to process the sudden interference. Their targeting systems, designed to track clear silhouettes, became confused by the soaring particle. Now stop moving. She grabbed his arm and pulled her forward, directly toward the gap between 2 drones. The machines tried to track them, but the ash was everywhere now, kicked up by their movement, spread by the wind. Drone managed to fire. The bolt hit his left shoulder. Her arm went numb instantly, the muscles locked by the stun energy. Pain exploded through her body. She kept running. The drone adjusted its position, trying to clear the ash from its sensors. That was its mistake. Had studied these machines. She knew their sensor arrays were located on their underbellies, protected by only a thin layer of metal. Picked up a sharp rock with her good hand. charged the drone, and jammed the rock directly into its center cluster. The machine screamed, a high electronic wail that echoed off the volcanic rocks. It spun wildly, its navigation destroyed, and crashed directly into the second drone. Both machines went down in a tangle of metal and sparks. The third drone, opened fire, felt the bolt pass her ear close enough to hear it sizzle. She grabbed more ash, threw it, and dove behind a boulder. It was beside her, pressed against the rock. His eyes were wide. Your arm. We'll recover. His voice was tight with pain. The stun effect is temporary. We need to move before the drone clears its centers. It was insane. You attacked military hardware with a rock. To her feet with her good arm, I did what was necessary. Behind them, the third drone tried to follow, but the ash cloud had spread across the entire area. Its sensors could not find them. After 3 minutes of searching, it returned to its patrol route, programmed to prioritize wide coverage over individual pursuit. It did not stop until they reached a narrow canyon. They pressed themselves into a crack in the rock wall, hidden from aerial view. Let me see your arm, said. Then at her numb limb. They examined it carefully, her clawed fingers gentle despite their sharp edges. Feeling will return in about 2 hours, said. You will be in significant pain when it does. I know. You could have died. You should have left me. And her head back against the rock. Her shoulder throbbed. Her legs ached. She had not slept properly in over 30 hours. Told you, she said quietly. Terrans do not leave people behind. Silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed her clawed hand on his good shoulder. We'll have a word, said. It describes a warrior who does not strike first, but always strikes last. A warrior who waits and watches and survives until the moment is right. We call such a warrior the patient blade. It is the highest honor among my kind. Looked at her. Her patient blade, I did not see it before, I see it now. Rested for 30 minutes. Then, with arms still numb and still weak from her wounds, they continued toward the extraction zone. The sun was setting when they finally saw it. A flat plateau marked with lights, where a transport ship waited to carry survivors back to the station. They had walked through fire and poison and pain, hunted by machines, and tested by a world that wanted them dead. They had made it. They crossed the final 100 meters, saw other survivors gathering at the ship. There were 11 cadets total out of 40 who had started. Some were wounded, some were barely standing. But they were alive. Assembly Hall was filled with thousands of cadets from every species in the Galactic Union. They sat in rows that stretched back in shadows, their eyes fixed on the raised platform at the front of the room. The annual combat exam results were about to be announced. Near the back, her left arm still wrapped in a healing brace. The stun damage had faded, but the muscles were slow to recover. Beside her, sat straight and proud despite the visible crack in her exoskeleton that would take months to fully heal. Adder stood on the platform with the other division commanders. His face showed nothing, but noticed that he kept glancing in her direction. Captain Condon stepped forward. He was ancient, belonging to a species so old that their original name had been forgotten. His body was thin and gray, but his voice carried through the hall like thunder. Combat examination on Moon 4 has concluded, he announced. 40 cadets were deployed. 11 survived to extraction. These results will now be read. Holographic display activated, showing names and scores. The ranking system was complex, measuring elimination count, survival time, tactical decisions, and resource management. Most cadets focused on the first category. More elimination meant a higher score. Knew there were other ways to excel. Commandant read the results from bottom to top. His name appeared early, his elimination coming just 6 hours into the exam. He had charged a drone head-on and paid the price. Several were listed next, their cold-blood bodies struggling with the temperature changes. They performed better, their armor protecting them longer. In the top 10 were announced. That of the survival time, 48 hours. Elimination count 0, tactical assessment above average, resource management below average. Additional note, complete examination despite severe injury with assistance from. Even further in her seat, completing the exam with a cracked shell was nearly unheard of. List continued. Names were called, scores were displayed. The crowd grew restless, waiting for the top position. Finally, only one name remained. The dead of the Terrans. The hall went silent. Commandant's display changed, showing a detailed breakdown of his performance. The numbers were extraordinary. File time, 48 hours. Elimination count, 2 drones disabled through environmental manipulation. Tactical assessment, exceptional. Resource management, exceptional. Additional notes. She being paused and looked directly at. Repaired critical equipment failure using improvised materials within 30 minutes of deployment. She traveled more than 20 kilometers across hostile terrain while conserving supplies effectively. She provided emergency medical treatment to wounded using local resources and species-specific biological knowledge. She engaged and disabled 200 drones without conventional weapons, using environmental factors to compensate for physical elimination. Commandant straightened to his full height. This is the highest tactical score in the history of the combat examination. This is not the profile of a low-threat species. Silence in the hall was absolute. Thousands of aliens who had dismissed Terrans as weak and fragile were now staring at a small human one who had outperformed them all. Then someone started glabbing. Then saw me standing in the crowd, his hands coming together in the Terran gesture of respect. Other Terran joined him, then another. Soon, the humans scattered through the hall were all applauding. And then slowly others joined. And clicking her mandibles in approval, stomped his feet in the traditional sign of respect, raised his head and howled, the long note echoing off the walls. Applause grew until it filled the entire hall. Very still, her face calm, but something warm was spreading through her chest. She had not come here for applause. She had come to prove something to herself and to the galaxy. She had proven it. The ceremony found her in the quarter. The Massive looked different than before. His eyes were lowered, his tail tucked, his entire body showing submission rather than aggression. Watch the drone footage, he said quietly. I saw what you did for her, I saw how you fought. Waited. What's wrong about you, Terran? You are small, your body is soft, your claws are weak. Lowered his head until his eyes were level with hers. But you are not weak, I see that now. Turned and walked away before she could respond. That night, me found her in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Are updating the species registry, he said, grin widely. Terrans are being reclassified. What? Endurance that of high threat potential. Do not underestimate. Me laughed. Can you believe it? One exam and you changed how the entire Galactic Union sees our species. Took her head. I did not change anything. I only showed them what was already true. Added the same thing. Stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars drift past the stadium window. What happens now, me, you asked. And continues, there will be more exams, more tests, more chance to prove ourselves. Turn to face him. But something has changed. Before they did not see us at all. Now they will be watching. Is that good or bad? It's both. They will expect more from us now. They will test us harder, but they will also respect us more. And respect is the first step toward equality. Returned to her barracks, she found something on her door. One had scratched a word into the metal with what looked like claws. The marks were rough and deep, carved with strength that no Terran possessed. Based on the size of the scratches, it was probably. The word was symbol Terran. It was not written as an insult. There were no other marks, no mockery, no cruelty, just the word standing alone. Name, a title, statement of identity. It's the letters with her finger, feeling the rough edges where the metal had been torn. She thought about everything that had led her to the moment. The attack on her colony, the 11 days alone, the months of training, the exam that nearly killed her. All of it had brought her here to this door to the word. Had arrived at the academy as a curiosity, a small soft creature from a species no one respected. She had been laughed at, dismissed, ignored. She had been told she would fail, that she would break, that she would prove once again that Terrans did not belong in combat. That she had survived, she had adapted, she had overcome. In doing so, she had refined what it meant to be Terran. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, filled with species who were stronger, faster, and more deadly than humans would ever be, but had learned something important during those 11 days alone in the wreckage of her colony, something she had proven again on the volcanic surface of 4. It was not just about muscles and claws and armor. Strength was about endurance, patience, refusing to give up when everything seemed impossible. They might be small, they might be soft, they might lack natural weapons. They survived, they adapted, they overcame. And they never ever stopped fighting. Mild opened her door and stepped inside. Our training would continue. Tomorrow there would be new challenges, new tests, new opportunities to show the galaxy what Terrans could do. She was ready, and so was she. The exam had begun.